Welcome back to Startup Talk. I'm your host, the startup coach and founder of Toronto Starts, one of the largest startup communities in Canada. And with me today is Eric Brass of Tequila Tromba. Welcome, Eric.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's a great to have you, and I'm really excited to get into this. So, why don't you start with telling us a little bit about Tequila Tromba?
Yeah, so Tequila Trauma is a brand that I founded based on going down to Mexico on exchange with school and falling in love with tequila. So many of us have the preconception of what tequila is, and I thought it was that terrible shot at that horrible bar at that seedy hour of the night. Ended up trying good tequila for the first time and was amazed by how good it was. Came back to Canada, worked a day job for a number of years, and then one day quit my job, went for the dream, and started Tromba. And didn't really know anything about the booze business. Didn't have any major financial backers. Didn't have any distribution contacts. But I saw there was a gap in the marketplace for an ultra premium tequila at an accessible price point with a great Mexican pedigree behind it. I'm not a great Mexican pedigree, in case you can't tell, but better to be lucky than smart. A friend of mine was a gentleman named Rodrigo Sedano. His father is Marco Sedano. Marco created a little tequila brand you may have heard of called Don Julio. So we said, why don't we pitch Marco to be our master distiller? It's basically asking Wayne Gretzky to play in your men's league team. He's going to tell you to bugger off, but you'll ask him anyway. And we did. And he said, you know what? I've never been an owner before. I've always been an employee. So make me an owner. That's rule number one. Rule number two is no gringos in the kitchen. Me and my son Rodrigo are going to effectively build this brand the way we want to build it. And myself as a gringo has no say as to how he effectively makes tequila, the processes he used, and so on and so forth. He's taking all of these years of passion and craft and experience and putting it into one bottle. And we said, okay, let's do it. And effectively did a first round of financing, which I like to call affectionately, though not so affectionately at the time, but affectionately now, pity money from friends and family. So 5,000 here, 10,000 there, and we raised enough to do our first production run, and had about $10,000 left in marketing, and ended up selling it out of my backpack, bar by bar, bottle by bottle. And we built Tromba to number one independent tequila brand in Canada, number two premium tequila brand in Canada, number one independent tequila brand in Australia, number two in Australia in the premium side as well, and now one of the fastest growing tequila brands, craft tequila brands in the U.S., partnered with Sazerac down there. So it's been a very interesting grassroots journey. But yeah, I mean, here I am today.
It sounds great, and I want to get into it. But why don't we start what you were like growing up? Were you a handful for your parents? Were you studious, into music, socializing, sports?
I mean, hockey was obviously a big thing for me. So some of my, a lot of my close friends today I met for hockey. So sports, I'm a big fan of sports, and I encourage my kids to play sports, not only from from the exercise point of view, but also from the friend making community point of view of building that community that can last for your entire life. I wasn't the most studious child, but whenever I had a challenge, whether it was on the academic side or something like that, I like to effectively, meet and exceed that challenge. And when it came to hockey, for example, I was certainly not the most athletically talented, put it that way, but I was probably the hardest worker on the ice. So I'd like to outwork everybody and get in people's faces. And I think that that work ethic translated into my career and translated into being an entrepreneur. So yeah, it was I certainly wasn't the top of my class in marks wise, though. I goofed off probably a little bit too much.
So you mentioned you're working a day job, and you said, "The heck with it, I'm making the leap." Can you tell me how that mental switch happened, from coming home from work or whatever to say, "Damn it, I'm quitting and I'm starting a tequila company"?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be disingenuous if I said that it was something that happened overnight, and I just said, well, nuts to this, I'm going to start a tequila company. And the funny thing is, I really liked my job, and I really liked my boss, and I was learning a heck of a lot. I was in portfolio management, so I was looking at companies, some of which were liquor companies, and analyzing companies every day, and it was really exciting. And so it was really a process. I mean, it was a process that took me a long time to do because, again, doing well my job and making money, and here I am quitting something that effectively is going into the unknown. Didn't have any sort of financing, so effectively my salary went to zero, and living at my parents' place and using my father's garage as my first warehouse, and our office were coffee shops because that's all we could afford. And so that's not an easy thing to come to terms with. And I think, that was almost a decade ago. And I would say the infrastructure for entrepreneurship isn't nearly as, sophisticated as it is today. So it was a lot of chats with friends and family. It was a lot of chats with loved ones. And really, it came down to the fact that I knew I had something inside of me, an entrepreneurship bug that wouldn't go away unless I effectively tried. And the worst case scenario is I fail and I learn a heck of a lot, and I can either do something else, or I can go back to working in finance.
Now, did the idea happen where you were talking to your friend and he said, "Well, wait a minute, I've got this tequila connection, so let's make this happen"? Or did you make the jump and say, "All right, I'm doing this," and then the things fell together?
I went back and forth after I did my exchange in Mexico. I went back and forth a lot, and I would always bring back new and interesting tequilas. And the reaction I got first was, "Don't give me that stuff. I hate tequila. I don't want to try it." And what's interesting is the really, like, the younger generation now. They don't have that bad experience because tequila has just been premiumized in the last 3 4 years, where folks like me do. And I would effectively come back with these tequilas, and people would first say, effectively treat it as if it was poison, and then I convinced them to try it, and they'd say, "Wow, I mean, just to see their reaction, it was absolutely mind blowing." And then I saw more and more people would ask me, can I mule tequilas back for them? I would get invited to parties. They'd say, "Eric, you can come too if you want to, but just bring your tequila, or just drop it off at the door and leave." leave almost. So I saw it was just so exciting, and the misconception, and the opportunity to effectively bring that type of product to the marketplace really excited me. So it actually came from us going down to Mexico and convincing them versus somebody having a product and saying you should sell this. And I think our approach was different. It certainly had to be different because we didn't have any budget, so we had to effectively think outside the box. And that came from talking to my business partner Marco Sedano and Rodrigo, our distilling team, to the approach of it. Because the conventional approach is you have a master distiller for hire, and he or she makes your stuff and also makes a bunch of other stuff. But it's probably the quote unquote cheaper and easier solution. Our approach was, no, this is going to be a founder owned brand, and you're going to be part of this thing, which was not the typical approach. And the way we approached the market too was extremely different, and different not because I had this genius dream about how to effectively do it, but different almost out of necessity, which I find is probably a bit of an underused blessing when you start a brand with limited resources.
Now, you started this, we were talking about just beforehand that you've been in LCBO for 10 years. So you started this a while ago. And I'm just reading recently that mezcal based drinks are taking the world by storm and are set to overtake vodka in North America as a favorite soon. So, how big was the tequila market when you started, and why is it growing so fast now?
Yeah, so it's the fastest growing spirit right now, in the world, and effectively, well, I shouldn't say in the world, I should say North America. What's really propelling is the premiumization. It's folks like probably me and you that have discovered that tequila can be sipped, can be enjoyed, can be savored, can be put in a great cocktail. It's a natural stimulant. It's an upper. It's lower in calories. Doesn't have any refined sugar in it if it's done properly. So there's a lot of benefits of drinking tequila, besides it being delicious when made properly. And then also there's a whole influx of, there's a whole influx of celebrity brands too that have come into the world of tequila, which have been, I think, an absolute blessing for the category because they've just focused more and more attention into the tequila category. So tequila shows no signs of slowing down. It's only increasing, and it's been a really, I think now it's the second most premiumized spirit, actually, I think in the world behind cognac. And if you'd have told me that, even 5 years ago, it would have been equivalent to saying that I'm going to be living on the moon in 5 years. It's been incredible, the premiumization that's gone on in the tequila industry.
So you're now number one in Canada. What were some of the challenges starting a tequila brand and getting to number one?
Yeah, so number one independent in Canada. So the big boys still, in some respects, outsell us. We're number one in Toronto bars and restaurants on the premium side, which is pretty cool. So we have a lot of bartender and industry support, which is a market that we focused on, and we carved out our niche, which grew and grew and grew, and we're always ever thankful of that. The challenges, I mean, where do I start? It's you're on the one hand, you have effectively a supply chain that's down in Mexico, which has unique challenges being Mexican produced. Agave is the raw material that's used to make tequila, takes over 8 years to produce in some occasions. So you have that. You have huge price fluctuations when it comes to agave. It's long cyclical. And then you have an industry that's really appealing to get into because it's fun, it's interesting. You can throw parties, so you have a lot of competition, and your main competitors, the one you really have to think about, are have hundreds of millions of dollars, or even maybe your tens of millions of dollars of marketing budget, a huge amount of sales force, brand recognition, established relationships, and here you are, effectively this nothing brand, unknown promoter with an unknown product, coming in to compete with these sophisticated, well-oiled machines. And on paper, you don't stand a chance. So, I mean, I remember the first business plan that I ever gave to an industry expert, and he gave it back to me with more red ink on it than black ink. And words like impossible, not the way it's done, can't be done this way. Marketing budget is forget about $10,000. You're looking at $1 million at least to start in Ontario, which is not New York or not LA in some respects. And he wasn't wrong in the conventional way to do things, because there's just such an incredible amount of challenges that seem insurmountable if you effectively take a objective approach and look at it on paper.
So the LCBO shelves are crowded and notoriously hard to get into. You got in there 10 years ago. So, a lot of the startups I talk to now just got in last couple of years or whatnot. What was it like back then? And did you attack the LCBO first, or did you go to a different market?
Yeah, the LCBO gave us our shot. So, again, unknown promoter with an unknown brand in a spirit that that wasn't where it's at today. And so he, gentleman named Greg Trana gave us a chance and basically said, hey, here's what you have to do, and here's a quota you have to hit. And I think I can't remember the numbers offhand, but talk maybe 8 or 9 tequila brands they listed that year. We were the only one that survived after 24 months by hitting quota and working the market. The LCBO, I find, can be really great partners if you sell well and engage with them and mind your manners and give back. So I have a lot of respect for the LCBO, and that because of that. But they're also they demand a lot, because I'm not the only one. You're not the only one that knows that they're the largest or one of the largest sellers of alcohol on the planet. And that's shelf space is very competitive, and there's a lot of brands coming in and brands going out. So it can be a great part of your business if you really focus with them and also don't allow them to effectively help them, but also help yourself. Take the initiative to go out and sell the products yourself and have your own sales force, your own infrastructure there. Because if we didn't do that and we just said we'll just rely on retail sales, pixie dust didn't hit our bottles, and they just started flying off the shelves. We had to effectively curate and detail the brand with our own team and our own budget.
Now we have our first question in the chat room here, so I'm just going to toss it in. What do you think of small distillers' self-delivery programs that are happening now?
What do I mean, I think they're, as a concept, I think they're great. I think that the more that we can get, independent and micro distilleries and small distillers to effectively get their product into the hands of consumers is a phenomenal win. I think that people now are looking for new, curated, interesting products. They don't want, just kind of the mass brands that have been thrown at them for years, and they want to try something different and unique. And what I found, as a result of COVID, and I can talk about this with bars and restaurants and the on-premise community, is I found that the premiumization level there has been surprisingly strong, because folks have been home for too long, and maybe it's a fact of there's been income saved, or maybe it's a fact of it's, hey, I'm not going to live forever, life's too short. But they're spending more and they're demanding better when it comes into bars and restaurants. There may not be as many people going, but the level of spend, the average check size, is significantly higher than what it was pre-COVID. Now, whether or not that's going to last, I don't know. I believe that an element of premiumization will, certainly. But yeah, I think that's, programs like that to get, these really awesome products into people's hands more easily I'm all for it.
So shelves are crowded. And how do you attack the mindshare problem when someone's going into the store? Do you want them already thinking about tequila Tromba before they enter the LCBO, or is it your presentation on the shelf that really makes all the difference? Is it a last minute buying decision, or do people come for that brand?
Well, the way we build our brand is, we build the brand on premise in bars and restaurants, and we develop the volume off premise afterwards. And that's been a winning strategy for us, because we have a product that fits with that strategy. I've seen other brands try to invoke the same strategy that we have, and whether it be cost or story, which is a lot of cases, or even bottle shape, can factor into it. There's got to be kind of a 360 connection with the trade for that to effectively work, and for them to get behind it, because they're the ultimate detectors of BS in a lot of cases. And so, from our perspective, a lot of our brand is built, in the bar and restaurant community, where somebody comes in and says, either what do you recommend when it comes to tequila, or I'll have a brand of X, and they say, well, I can give you a brand of X, but why don't you try this brand Tromba, and here's the story behind it. So they become kind of our unofficial brand ambassadors, and so a lot of the flow through that we see in the LCBO has been built from there, and then also word of mouth is, it's cliche or maybe old fashioned to say it's the best brand builder, but it truly is. It's folks that hear about it from effectively, maybe the bartender's the original source of it. Maybe he tells that person buys a bottle and brings it to a party, and then effectively it starts to spread. And we reached a point where effectively, something just clicked and something unique happened, and the brand just really started to roll and build and build and build. And I used to go into bars and restaurants and say, do you have Tromba? And they would say, what's Tromba? And I would point to the bottle, and they'd say, oh yeah, this thing, I've never seen it before. And now, I'll sit down in a bar, and the person beside me, order a round of Trombas. And obviously I pick up the bill. But that's kind of where it's gone to. And I think it starts from a specific market that we targeted, and it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. That's not the only way to build a brand. And believe me, it's a difficult way to build a brand, and it's a long way to build a brand, but that for us has been a recipe for success.
Now, everyone talks about hustle. You mentioned, having a backpack full of bottles and going from bar to bar. Can you tell me some of the things that you did to get your traction going in the bars to start building that brand awareness?
I mean, we're, basic. It sounds very basic, but storytelling. Like we effectively were, myself and anybody in my team, just early on, even today, we tell the stories to where Tromba came from and who makes it and how it's made, and because we have a story that's, the story is not, we source our, the agave from a volcano which erupted 150 years ago, and and fairies kind of, it's a real story of effectively of folks putting their passion into a brand and building on a brand that ties back into the Canadian community here, that people really love. And so storytelling is a massive part of it. And we didn't have the budgets to effectively do quote unquote conventional marketing in that respect. And we really have never really been a conventional type organization. But also one of the things that we did is, while we went in there and we engaged with, the typical way to do it was you go into a bar and restaurant at the time, and less so today, but even certainly today, you go into a bar and restaurant and you ask to speak to the manager, the purchaser, the owner, because that's the person that's going to ultimately buy your product, and it makes complete intuitive sense. We didn't do that. We went to the bartender. We sat down at the bar and we had a drink, and we spoke to the bartender, and we told the bartender the story of Tromba. And that didn't always lead to a direct sale. In fact, usually didn't lead to a direct sale because that bartender doesn't have the purchasing power, or maybe forgot about it. But it builds the brand, it builds the character of the brand with that bartender. And also any bar that's kind of worth their salt is going to listen to their bartender. So eventually that bartender says, well, I want to stock this product. And the whole skip the middleman theory for us didn't work, because that middleman was the most important part of our value chain. So really engaging the bartenders and telling the story and not going the conventional path really, really helped us to build Tromba.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I used to do corporate work, and if I wanted to do something big before I took it to the bosses, I would work the managers first, plant the idea. So by the time I got to the bosses, they were already on board because they had heard it from other people. So if the bartenders have already heard of Tromba, mention it to the manager and whatever, and when you're talking to them, all of a sudden, it's a lot smoother road. And I've seen people do it. Sitting at a bar having a beer, I've seen people come in, talk to the manager, next thing you know, they're out here. It can be very awkward. How thick skin do you have? Because I always think that the difference between a successful founder and an unsuccessful founder is really willing to do those things that are embarrassing, the things that you really need to have thick skin for, just beyond the next person. And those ones will be successful. The ones who can't go into the bar and do exactly that for the 100th time. What kind of, how long did it take you to get that thick skin? And how long did it take you to get that sales script down? How many, was it 5? Was it 10? Was it 100 times?
I mean, I've been told no more times than I can count. So I can't even give you a scientific answer on that. What I will say though is, yeah, your ability to go from sale to sale, and if you've been told no 9 times and present it the same way the 10th time, that's what's going to measure success. If you're told no and you're going to get into a negative loop, the second sale after the first no is going to be just that much more difficult, and then the third sale is going to be that much more difficult, and then the fourth sale is going to be impossible. So you've talked yourself out of it right off the bat. Some of my best customers today are people that told me no. Not once, not twice, but multiple times. Some of my favorite bars are people that told me no. And if I would have, there's a way to, not take no for an answer as well, which is strategically following up and not being, what about it. So there's that element too, but then there's the element of you have to maintain that exact level of enthusiasm, even though somebody's told you no. And it can be a completely unreasonable no. And it can frustrate you, and you can be completely correct in the fact that why would this person tell me no? But you also don't know their circumstances. You don't know what they're up against. You don't know what's underneath kind of the hood. So from that perspective, it's important to keep that enthusiasm.
How do you define success for Tequila Tromba, and how will you know when you're there?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously we're a corporation, so we have shareholders. So measuring success based on shareholder returns, whether it's through dividends or acquisition or whatever the case may be, is extremely important to us. I think really for us, it's about what's going to get us to success is sustainable, strong sales that we're effectively doing based on executing a strategy that's not a temporary strategy that evokes long-term brand building and building a proper brand that people want to try, that have an affinity towards, that have loyalty towards. Whatever the definition of success is, that's the way effectively we're going to build it, and that's what we're focused on. Whether it be in Canada, where we just signed with with Mark Anthony Brands, who is an awesome company. They brought the world White Claw and Mike's Hard Lemonade. Whether it be with the Sazerac guys in the U.S. or whether it be with a company called Artisan in Australia, having those partnerships are also really important to getting to that success.
We talked originally about your funding situation and how it started. It's a long journey for any startup to get funding. Can you tell me how your funding process went the first few times, and did you get better along the way?
Yeah, I mean, we, our first funding, well, I mean, basically went to a few institutions because I'm an institutional guy, and if I could get the phone call or if I get the meeting, I was laughed effectively out of the room, being like, I'm going to invest actual dollars into a premium craft tequila out of Toronto. It doesn't make any sense, and it didn't make any sense. So for us, it was really, and that was not a smart route for us to go. We went through friends and family to start off, and then we went to kind of, micro, I would call them micro institutions after we built a track record. And that's also really important. I think I get sometimes calls from, folks that just got out of school that want some advice. They're starting their own company, and I commend them for starting their own company out of school without any experience, because I wasn't that brave. That's something. And they're very, very hell bent on raising money, and and they find it, and it's very difficult at that point to raise money. And my viewpoint is, we'll go and start building success and case studies and track records, and do it in your own backyard, right? So for us, it was really important, after we raised obviously a little bit of seed financing to get going, to show traction in Toronto. That's our backyard. If we're not going to succeed in Toronto, we ain't going to succeed anywhere. And once we effectively did that, then we can go back and start, getting some more capital in the door. But we never rushed the process of getting capital in the door. And also, not having that amount of access to capital certainly helped us understand what a return on investment was, especially for folks that were not industry veterans and had to approach a different way. And that's probably been the biggest blessing we've had with the brand, because we always think differently when it comes to return on investment in building our brand. And if somebody would give me $5 million to start off the brand, I would have probably wasted $4.9 million of it.
Now, I don't know a lot about tequila, but I do know I've tried a lot of crappy tequila. I lived in Mexico for 2.5 years doing some work, and I tried some amazing tequila. How is Tromba Tequila different?
Yes, there's not one specific thing that we do that makes a difference, right? But the fact that we are distiller owned, so Marco and Rodrigo are distilling family, the Citano family, again, 17 years making tequila for Don Julio. Marco celebrating his 50th year making tequila this year. It's effectively the chef making dinner for his family. Marco is making the tequila for himself, where the vast majority of master distillers are making tequilas for their hired guns, are making tequilas for dozens of other brands. And if they're a big company, then how involved are they in the process? Really, how much control do they have? It's a different question. So you have a master distiller effectively that owns the brand that's making it, and there's not one specific thing he does when he makes it. It's just every single step of the process has a no compromise approach. It's Marco taking his 50 years of experience, and Rodrigo, who is his son, kind of bringing that modern aspect to it. So we call it a nice tension of modern craft, where Marco invokes kind of the old school, it's always been done this way. And Rodrigo's, well, hold on a sec. Just because it's done that way doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. Why don't we try something else? It's going to not hurt our quality, but enhance our quality. And that's been a really, really winning combination for us. It's not always easy. And having our own office infrastructure down in Mexico is not easy, but it's paramount to effectively the quality that we have today. And having our own team, effectively producing Tromba versus just outsourcing it, so we can control the quality, build the quality, handpick our agaves, be involved in every single step of the production process, from the agave harvesting to effectively the cooking, to the fermentation, distillation, the bottling, the aging. Every single aspect has our master distiller's hands on it.
I like to try to share both success and failures, so there's a chance that somebody listening won't make the same mistake. Can you tell us a time where you screwed up or made the wrong startup decision and what happened?
I think there's no, it's probably five hours of chat on the mistakes I've made. Um, I would say that one of the big mistakes that I've made that took me a while to learn was on the hiring aspect of things, and you know I don't know, but one of the things I did was sometimes I would hire folks that had really wonderful resumes and had wonderful experiences, and I thought I could accelerate the brand really quickly, and really good connections within the marketplace, but just didn't fit the culture of what we wanted to do. And there's an old saying that education is easier than re-education. So a person that's working in the industry for 20 years, 15 years, 30 years, and has been successful is going to come with effectively, this is the way I've been doing it. This is what's built me success. It's very natural for that person to say, that's what I want to do. Leave me alone, let me do it. And if that's not in line with what the company is doing, you're going to have problems. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be 6 months from now, but you're going to have problems. And I've realized that, and I've said, you know what, the work or the sales or the benefits will outweigh any sort of issues with that. It's been every time the wrong decision, and it always seems to bite you, and you just throw good money after bad. And it's really really important that the people you hire align with your culture, your vision, and exactly kind of what their downfalls can be. So, I mean, I've also found that every time I've hired somebody and I know that person's not going to work, and I say, oh, you know what, I'll change the role a little bit, or I'll give that person another, I'll give that person some new things to do, or I'll try to do this from my end, or give them another manager. It also almost every single time it never works. Once you've hit that point where that person is effectively that person's not going to fit. Again, my viewpoint is you make a change as quick as possible, because it's not doing that person any favors and it's not doing the company any favors.
Great advice. Go with your gut. If there's something you feel they're not going to work out, they're not going to work out. You know your company more than anybody else, and yeah, when you know that and they're already there, the sooner you can make the decision, the better, because people don't really understand how dramatically affects everyone else in the company.
It's a really hard thing to do, and it sounds really simple. It's a really hard thing to do, because you invoke change on something, and listen, things are. It's not like it's a complete disaster, and orders aren't being delivered and sales aren't going out. But so you say, well, I don't want to. I don't want to have a good thing going. I don't want to disrupt the apple cart here, but it will. It spreads. It really does spread, and it will impact the entire organization.
Yeah, so deal with it quick. What do you wish you knew before you started? You said you jumped in, you didn't know all these things. What's the one thing you wish you knew before you started?
I mean, I would say that feedback was probably to save me a heck of a lot of time and a heck of a lot of money for sure. A lot of things. I will tell you though, the one, maybe I'll twist kind of your question with another answer. I would say in a lot of cases, ignorance was very bliss, because if I would have done things quote unquote by the book, we wouldn't be here today. We would have been out of money or out of interest in year one, year two. The fact that we didn't really know anything about the industry, we took it from a different approach. People would say it's always done this way, and we'd say, well, why? Why can't we do it this way? That was to us inherently our biggest competitive advantage. And I ended up hiring my first few hires in Tromba were folks that really didn't know anything about the industry. They came from other backgrounds, and they took the same approach that I took, which was an out of the box, new way of thinking approach. And that ignorance was extremely beneficial. So what I would always say is, the people that don't, you don't have to have 15, 20 years experience or 10 years experience to effectively execute a proper strategy. Sometimes that ignorance can be a curse, but sometimes it can be a blessing.
What's your biggest lesson in pitching your company? What did you do wrong at the beginning, and what did you do right?
Um, I mean, again, I think it just comes down to storytelling and getting people. You can talk about product attributes all you want. You can talk about terroir. You can talk about obviously the product quality is really, really important, but what's going to captivate people is the story, is where it comes from, and to be part of something and something they can identify with. It's got to effectively hit the brain, but also hit the heart. So, one of the things we started off, we talked more about more of a value proposition. Like exceptional value this is, and you could be paying 30% more to get something that's not as good. I mean, that's a rational way to go about things, but it's not very romantic. It doesn't really get you really attached to the brand. No, you don't go out and say, I drink this product, whatever it is, because it's great value. That's not really the way that people, that's not human nature. So for us, it's all about just telling that story, and how do we amplify, and how do we tell that story more and more? How do we get other people to tell that story too? Because that's what's going to resonate.
It's so true. People remember stories and connections, and that cold hard data has no convincing value. People think it does, but it doesn't. And the story is so important, and I'm glad you emphasized that. Do you have a favorite productivity hack for founder and CEO?
Maybe I should ask you for a productivity hack. Um, it's a good question. I mean, I tell my team whenever I hate. I tell my team when I have new people that start, I say, if you're going to write me an email, I don't need, give it to me in the shortest possible form. I love I'm a bullet point guy. I love bullet points. No need to, when it's too long for an email, I will send it back and say, please summarize this email in three, four lines, because I get obviously a ton of emails every day. I think for me, I'm a big fan of decentralization as well. So I will put a lot more autonomy on my teams and have them effectively manage their areas of business and put trust in there. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to make probably their fair share of mistakes, and that's to be expected. But I try to hire people that are self-starters and autonomous, so they can effectively carry the ball over the goal line. And I don't like centralized structures, so I don't need to check on everything that goes on within the organization. That to me is, I think, the ultimate productivity hack, is having a decentralized team that you trust that can execute on their own fruition.
So you're moving along, and 2020 happens, and COVID hits. So your mindset we're talking about is bar first, get it in the bar, be a high end brand, then move to the LCBO. But all of a sudden, bars are closed, things are changing. What did you do to pivot or react to this change in the environment?
Well, it was horrible. I mean, it was it was horrible because our business, in Canada, we have the retail element of the LCBO, or we're strong retail sales. So from besides the human element of seeing a lot of my friends, businesses they put their blood, sweat, and tears into for years and had great success, good zero overnight for nothing that they've done wrong, was, from a personal standpoint, very draining. But yeah, from a business standpoint, our business was decimated in March, April, May, June, during COVID. And for us, we didn't have a great 2020 because of that, because we're so bar restaurant focused. And where it was a terrible place to be at that time, now it's a great place to be again, because of all of the people coming back and the premiumization that's going on. What do we do? I mean, there were certain things we could do. We didn't. One of the risks that we had was we didn't want to change the brand, because the brand works, and we didn't want to become something we weren't because of unknown unknowns going on within the world. So there was some things where we effectively had to stand pat on, which may have not been the best short-term solution, but was a good medium-term solution. We certainly came out with unique things like cocktail kits, and we had our ready to drinks. And that's really when we kind of started to solidify some partnerships with larger players, because we knew that distributor retention was difficult pre-COVID. It's going to be more difficult post-COVID to get the large distributors, for example, in the U.S. to pay attention to you. And that's when we worked on our partnerships with companies like Sazerac and those types of things. So we were less planning for being successful during COVID. We were more planning for being successful once COVID, either dissipated a little bit or hopefully goes away at some point or becomes a natural part of life. And also we ended up focusing on markets that were, that handled COVID differently, whether, one thinks it's rightly or wrongly, markets like Florida and Texas, where they open things up a lot quicker. That's where we kind of put budget, and that's paid back then, and that's actually paying back now as well.
We have another question from the chat room here. Did you build a distillery from scratch in Mexico? And do you bottle here or there?
No, we didn't. We actually, so we have a unique relationship with our distillery. Marco and his team actually go in, clean the equipment, take over the distillery, produce Tromba, and kind of give the keys back to the distillery. We're only allowed to do that because it's Marco. That's nothing to do with me. And then in terms of bottling tequila has to be bottled down in Mexico for it to be 100% agave tequila. You can bottle it outside of Mexico, but it cannot be labeled as 100% agave tequila.
Good to know. What resources or communities do you recommend for businesses starting up in Canada?
I mean, I would say one of the things that's helped me was find yourself a mentor, and find yourself a group of mentors that you trust, that you can bounce ideas off of, or if you have problems, and pick the person that you would want to effectively, whether it's a connection to your school or even if it's a complete cold call out of the blue, to reach out to that person and say, hey, do you have half an hour of time over the next 30 days and build that relationship with that person. And generally speaking, I know from my perspective, I'll always try to donate my time to folks that want help or advice or anything like that. And I did that with a few of our, one of our investors who was not investors, we became one of my mentors. He went to Ivy and older than myself, was the CEO of one of the big companies. And I reached out to him and didn't know him from anything. And he said, next time you're in New York, hit me up. And so I did, and went to his office. And he actually, after 2-3 years of, helping, he became the chairman of our advisory board. So it's amazing how things work out in that way. So I think that, a mentor and a group of advisors as well. So building yourself a good advisory team is also helpful, because a lot of good people want to effectively give back and help coach young entrepreneurs and try to tell them the same mistakes that they made.
Absolutely, that's great. Great feedback and advice. Build your network. Don't be afraid to reach out to people, but don't waste their time. You talked about earlier about the wall of text. You're talking about employees. Now, if you're somebody randomly reaching out to you, don't do the wall of text. Keep it short and don't waste people's time. That's my advice when you're reaching out.
Yeah, keep it short and send send a very, if I get cold emails or messages or LinkedIn messages, whatever it is, and it's more than 2 paragraphs or a paragraph, I'm like, oh, I can't read it. Very short, very to the point. I had one of my communications teachers at Ivy, taught me a really good lesson. He said, whenever you're writing a business email, take out as many words as you possibly can, so it's really to direct and to the point, because that's what people want, direct and to the point. Don't be rude, don't be curt, but direct to the point.
Yeah, and it's simple as hard. Hemingway said, I believe it was Hemingway, if I had more time, I'd write a shorter sentence. So keep that in mind. What is next for you and Tromba Tequila?
Oh, well, we have a really exciting partnership in Canada with the Mark Anthony brands. So that's super, super exciting. Our U.S. footprint is growing. We're coming out with a special product later this year, early next year, that's culminating Marco's 50th year of making tequila. So stay tuned for that. but it's it's continually growing the brand, building the brand in markets where we're strong, and then building the brand where markets where we're not yet penetrated, which is a really exciting proposition for us.
Where can people go to find out more?
Go to our website, tequilatromba.com. If you're in the Ontario area, lcbo.com has our Blanco, Reposado, and Añejo, and we have little minis, which are wonderful stocking stuffers and just great all around gifts. And obviously, you can follow us on social media.
And we'll put links to all those in the show notes for you listening on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time today, Eric, to talk about your journey and Tromba Tequila.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for the awesome questions.
Thank you for being a part of Startup Talk.
The recording has stopped.
Thank you for everyone for joining us on YouTube and on Zoom. Thank you, Eric. This has been great. I'll send you. This will go out Monday. I'll send you some information Monday morning on the links and where it is and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, fantastic! Thanks very much for the time.
Hey, have a good one. And SL Goldberg, thanks for the questions and thanks for the feedback.
Thank you.